Are you looking for something affordable, unique, and fun to give away in your merch orders or at your shows? Look no further. Hit me up today to order 1-inch buttons for your band, label, or other project. High quality metal pin back buttons for your friends and fans' battle jackets, messenger bags, and guitar straps. $35 for 100 buttons shipped in the US. Message me on IG at Everything Remade to get started. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine. You can sign up there to read zines, get exclusive music, and so much more. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Ephemerality by New Forms, featuring my new pal Justin Valliere on guitar. The song comes off their debut LP As Dust Collects, which was released in October of last year.
Honestly, like when I started listening to bands like Korn in like fifth grade, like Follow the Leader came out when I was a fifth grader, and that was the perfect timing for that record to come out. And it was just cool to sort of feel like I could relate to somebody who was making this like heavy and aggressive music. I mean, it goes so much further beyond that. Like, you know, when I was in high school, seeing bands play and stuff like that. But yeah, probably like some Korn or Deftones, unfortunately. I mean, Deftones are great. I can't mess with Korn at all anymore, but
Yeah, I never got into Korn. The first instance that I really even knew people in, like, at this point it's pretty common when a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I grew up like listening to Korn, like within the scene, as you were, or
Sure.
whatever you want to call it. But like, you know, when I was first getting involved with this stuff, and like, you know, I mean, I had been playing in bands for years, but like my first like screamo band was in like 99, you know,
Sure.
late 98, 99. And we were recording our 7-inch at this studio that I did in Dayton, Ohio all the time. And I guess Issues had just come out, and our guitar player was like, you know, we're at this record store, and I think like I'm trying to find like some obscure Promise Ring 7-inches or something, you know, and our guitar player's like, oh, that new Korn came out, and you know, is like, let me get that Korn. And I was like, you like Korn? You know, like,
Yeah.
what? And I'm like, that's like the one with the bass guitar that's like the notes are like illegible because it's just like you just hear the chunky, you know, which is like became its own thing, right? But like,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I said, you're getting to hear stuff like that more and more. I don't have a reference for like their lyrics or anything, or like, you know, but like people still fuck with Glassjaw and stuff, and everybody knows, you know, the notorious like
Yeah.
history of like their lyrics and stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I'm not in love with that stuff. Well, it's funny though, because like, you know, like the Slipknot first record, the self-titled record that came out in like 2000 or 2001, is another one that was huge for me. And this was sort of like, I wanted to start playing music because of this heavy, aggressive music. And I hadn't heard anything like it before, because you don't really hear it on the radio until, you know, more of that nu metal stuff became popular. But like, I would like go to my friend's house, and he would play out of like a Randall Warhead or something, and we'd like play along to a song. Like, he would play guitar and I would just scream. And it was like, we didn't know anybody else, so we couldn't start. And this is like 8th grade, you know. It was like we had no idea what it took to start a band. But like, you know, like I listened to that stuff until probably maybe like my sophomore year. I started getting into like metalcore and stuff, because I had worked with this, or I had gone to this Thai kickboxing class, and one of the instructors randomly was like, "Oh, you should check out this band," and he was like telling me about Botch and like Norma Jean and stuff, and I got really really heavily into that. And like, as that was happening, like I was getting older, I was meeting more people, and finding people to play music with sort of evolved that way. But the other stuff, I was just so young that I couldn't really do much with it. So I think if I had known, like what better music was out there, I probably wouldn't have been so heavily into chord and stuff.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's it's funny that like we're having this conversation about sort of like bands that, I mean, no, no disrespect to anybody that still like likes a lot of that stuff authentically, like while acknowledging like whether some of the lyrics suck or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure,
Um,
sure.
but like because I was like putting some zines together and stuff earlier, and I was like going through my tapes, and I was like, oh, the first Danzig tape, and
Mm,
I'm like, Danzig is a 100% Tool, but like I still enjoy this album. Like the
yeah,
lyrics are terrible, and so is the person singing them. But like, and then I listened to like Anthrax, and I actually don't know like literally anything about anyone in that band. They could be great or they could be terrible as well. And
yeah,
I'm not gonna like financially support them at this point in their careers or whatever. Like I bought the tape when I was, I don't know, 13, or stole it. I don't know.
yeah,
But either
sure,
way, they got
yeah,
paid, right? They got paid because
yeah, yeah,
J.C. Penney did not get paid. But but I don't even know if J.C. Penney is a thing anymore. Anyway, but and that's my fault. You're welcome. Uh, it's not all my fault. My cousin stole stuff too. But anyway, I'm telling on him. It's okay. Uh, we love it. Um, but yeah, it's like it's wild how like you can start someplace and then like you end up somewhere else, and
yeah,
sometimes with me I am like, yeah, I don't. I think I'm the furthest from something like suicidal tendencies or whatever, the first stuff that I like listen to, than I could possibly be, right? But
yeah.
then every once in a while, I'm like, oh shit, I don't know. That riff right there is kind of suicidal tendencies, or whatever. Like, do you think there's any
That's
of
really
that
funny.
still in there in your like
Uh,
writing?
so so I don't know if there is now. I can tell you for 1,000% fact. The last screamo band I was in, called Alessa, that went from like 2007 to like 2011 or something. We were recording at Dead Air with Will Killingsworth, and we recorded this one song, and we're sitting in the control room like listening back to it, and I go, dude, this literally sounds like fucking Godsmack. and we ended up just axing the track because I just couldn't fuck with it. It was just like, I don't know, it was like too corny, and we never put it out. Like, we probably could have spent more time with it and made it not sound like that, but like it didn't really. I don't know, it's just you get a vibe sometimes and you're like, yeah, I can't mess with this at all. Like, but as far as today goes, I don't necessarily think, in terms of, definitely like none of that new metal stuff. Maybe a little bit of metalcore sometimes. I'm really into like panic chords still, but kind of
Hmm.
sprinkled throughout. Um, and my like metalcore phase was pretty small anyway. Like it kind of, that was like the gateway to like screamo and punk and things like that. So
Yeah.
I don't think I overdid it, and I missed a lot of that stuff that I kind of thought was really corny and like 2008 and beyond. So none of that really bothers me because I didn't listen to it then. So.
Yeah. See, I thought when you were telling that story, I thought you were about to say that Will was the one that acknowledged it sounded like something. And then
No, I
that,
did get a chuckle out of him though, which was good.
yeah, yeah. Well, see, that would have been way more humiliating than realizing it yourself and being like, okay, we're putting this horse down,
Yeah, I probably would have quit music
Yeah,
forever.
it's just been like, okay, I'm leaving. You all do whatever you want. I am gonna
It's
go be
been
an
nice knowing you.
accountant. Yeah. Um, I'm gonna go and join the family law firm or whatever. Furthest thing from music that you could do. Um, but yeah, so like back, I was gonna get into this like what bands have you been in and stuff at some point. So you said Alessa, and that sounds familiar. I was sort of like in that two prior to like the 2010s, I was sort of in this like I didn't know like a lot of bands and stuff. I wasn't touring and stuff. Were you? You did say 2008, right? Or is that when the band started?
We started in 2007 and we
Oh,
ended in like 2011.
okay. So so between then and New Forms, what were you doing? Were you playing in any bands then, or?
I played in this like hardcore band for like half a year just because I wanted to be playing music again so badly and I didn't really know anybody to play with. So this person was like, "Oh, you should join our band as second guitar player." And I did it for a little while. It was kind of a tough hang, like I would try to like bring ideas forward and nobody would mess with them. And like, practice would get blown off a lot. And there was a lot of talk about doing big things and not really any of the work behind it. And like, then I was also in school. It was my last year of school. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to step out and like focus on school. And so then I think towards the second half of my senior year at school, I posted something on Reddit, and that's how Chris and I met my drummer. But so basically, not really. Like it was a really small stint.
Yeah, just like a lot of but like personal life going on and stuff to catch up on and get yourself situated and
Yeah, right.
yeah,
It was tough to get stuff done, and so
yeah. Um, but in Alessa, you mentioned recording at um, Will Killingsworth's studio. So you were familiar with like Orchid and all that by then,
oh
and
yeah.
and what was that band sort of your first recording experience, or had you been sort of demoing and doing stuff like in previous bands, or?
Um, I mean, I was in this like really terrible kind of metalcore band initially when I was like a sophomore in high school called Transfusion that there's like no trace of left on the internet anywhere.
Okay.
Um, we went to recording and it was one of those things where you're like high schoolers and they're like, "Oh, this guy's a studio, let's go." And it was like everybody brought all their friends, which is
Mm-hmm.
hilarious because it's not conducive at all to any kind of like work environment.
Yeah.
That was really weird, and nothing ever really materialized of it. It just turned into a weird hangout. And then I was in this other screamo band in my like junior year called She Died Real Pretty. This just like really cringy, and we had done some recording with this guy RJ who played drums for the screamo band Lantitum back in the day. He had like a basement studio at his parents' place, and we had done some recording there. So like going to Dead Air was like kind of similar to that. Obviously, like a step up, but I don't know if you've like recorded at Dead Air. It's like very chill,
I have
and
not.
yeah. So it's like
I
I mean, I
couldn't
haven't been there in
go.
a long time, but
I couldn't go to Will and like I couldn't because it would be worse than your experience. It would actually be Will being like, "I wrote that already."
yeah, I
So,
feel it. I mean, I have orchid tattoos on my forearms, so if it gets cringier than that, I don't really know. Like I went in there with like orchid tattoos on my arms. That was like very corny feeling, but I
well,
feel you.
as Will's literally like, "That's actually the second song on Chaos is you can't." I'm sorry, I can't record that again. Um, no, but yeah, she died real pretty. Is that a quote from something, or
It's
I feel like I just saw a flyer with that name on it.
Oh, I don't know. That's weird. So it was a line out of so we when I was in high school, I went to see that movie Devil's Rejects, that like Rob Zombie one. It was the
Right.
sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, and we were just like infatuated with those movies. Like we just thought they were like so sick. And my friend bought the CD like soundtrack, and we were trying to think of a band name, and I was like thumbing through like the insert that it came with in the CD, and it had like newspaper clippings on the left and the right page, and on one side it said She Died, and the other side it said Real Pretty, and I don't know if they were like intentionally placed that way. I was like, oh, let's call our band this, and it's obviously like a horrible name, and I didn't think anything of it at the time because I was like 16, but
Yeah.
we were like, oh, that's so cool, man, like. So
Yeah.
that's how that came about.
Yeah, that's how that's why I feel like I remembered seeing that like is because it's I mean it's I'm not trying to say anything about the band whose name I may be misquoting now, or anybody's like band when they named it
Sure.
when they're 16 and they're like, oh yeah, I see now, that was kind of, maybe that wasn't that cool, but like
No.
that's like that thing in art, like and specifically like comics, has like a big problem where it's like you're like they're showing like a dead woman and it's like super sexualized, and you're like, this is a deceased person, and this artist had to draw like the most boobs and ass in the shot as
Right.
possible, and
Right.
you're just
Like, how
like,
do we make this look appealing?
right, you're
That's
like,
really
you're
gross.
like,
Yeah.
okay, no, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, and my my the thing I've got going for me is I can't draw that way. I can't draw good anyway. So like it's always, if I draw somebody dead, they're not going to look hot either way. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to, it's always going to be, okay, cool. Um yeah, she's not she's not being shitty about this. Well, also I
Right.
just can't draw that way. But yeah, I I'm fascinated with like people's early recording experiences because I you know, I think it's really sort of wholesome and stuff how sometimes we think we're going to go and do one thing and it turns into this other thing, and like you described this, oh, okay, this is this thing that turned into this hangout and now it's just like nothing,
Right.
and
Right.
I don't know, like at this point it's like not to you know assume too much, but like there's no evidence of this music, right? But you still probably remember like that was pretty fun hanging out at the time, or so, do you know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah. Sure.
Like
Yeah. Of course. Of
so it's
course. It's like a
like,
memory associated with it.
right, so like that it's funny how those parts of the recording can be in some cases even more meaningful than the music, because like
For sure. Yeah.
we're like we're in we're having our growing pains as far as music goes, but as far as
Yeah.
like being alive and appreciating what was happening, that's something that always, and I don't know, I talked about that a lot, like over the years doing this podcast, is especially when I'm doing these recordings like pretty much by myself. uh,
Mhm.
I, I like if I get to a recording and I'm like almost done and something weird hasn't happened that makes me like, oh, like, and this is the part in this recording where this weird thing happened, and like, then I'm just like not that satisfied. Like
Yeah.
some weird has to happen. Like I almost fell over and hurt myself. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
or
I
then
feel like you were recently talking about that with Pete from Sinaloa. I listened to that episode the other day, and
yeah,
I think you were talking about how like it might have been the one with Pete where you're talking about demoing and matching the energy of the demo for like the polished thing, and that's kind of going the other way with what you're saying. Like you're making it sound like being a perfectionist about it, where you've got this other thing where you're like trying to match the rawness of it too.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's really interesting.
yeah. I mean, it's 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 just all it's just like there's so much to account for, and I guess that leads into something I was going to ask way later, but we might as well just hit that now, which is that, like, y'all got started, well, not got started, let's just, I'm saying got started, but your first New Form's first release was in 2019,
Yep.
and Mary wasn't in the band yet. Mary is only on the newest recording, but there's only the two recordings. So
Hmm.
there's the first recording, I Don't Want to Live My Life Again, which is November 2019, and then As Dust Collects, which is October of 2023. So what I was going to ask is, and this is like pertaining to sort of what we were talking about, where it's like re-recording and how you're a couple of the songs you re-recorded, and of course with Mary on vocals now. what was what I was talking about, what we were just talking about just now, part of that like equation as far as like the decision to re-record those, and like because when you introduce Mary and then you're like, wow, this, like I'm not, like I'm only assuming this, part, so it's like it's not necessarily what you were thinking or whatever, but could have been to where you're just like, this is like so much better with you doing the vocals, like let's do it again. Or was it just like we still really love those songs, we want them to be a part of this album? Is it a little bit of A, a little bit of B? Like
So
what
it's a
kinds of decisions go into that, I guess?
yeah, it's a lot of different things. Definitely the immediate thing is like, well, we only have like with this record, it's like 15 minutes long, so we only have so much music, right? And we're still going to be playing those for our set to at least clock in at that amount of time, you know? So when she joined the band, she had to learn those songs anyway. And she was quite a trooper because, like, our old vocalist, like, his vocals were very his lyrics were very wordy, like so much so that like there were some times where we would have to like chop things, and kind of piece them together in the recording. And to her, amazing credit, she can blast through all of them, and it's honestly like so much to say in such a short period of time. Like doing it live is like so impressive. But if you like look at those two songs, Ember Twin and Transitions, and then our other stuff is like a little bit more sparse and spread out, and there's kind of like a little more rhythm to it. At least that's how I feel about it. But like, so yeah, it was like cooler to have her on that record, and still be playing those songs. And if people have that frame of reference, like at least they can still follow that while we're playing a bunch of other new stuff too. Because those are the only two songs that we still play that were from that time anyway. Because I think there were only four in total anyways. Another, if you count Spirals, the instrumental one that was kind of on a whim.
I find that kind of thing fascinating. Every once in a while, like we we make we make an offhand remark, like when it was coming up on Inspirata 10-year anniversary, we were getting together to record uh wow, I don't remember. I don't remember which album, cuz we have an album, like cuz we recorded our 7th album, and then the next summer we recorded our 9th album, but then I was like, in between those, because like our 9th was supposed to be our 8th, in between those I was like, hey, actually I have this other thing that I want to do before we release that other thing. So
Yeah.
like, I think it was when we recorded our 9th album, which is called Hunting Shadows. I think it was when we recorded the drums for that. Before that, we were like, we should just record Inspirata start to finish, just me and you live. Like,
Oh wow.
and Jason was like, yeah, let's fucking do it. And we were kind of like all the way up till like he flew out here to record the drums. We were kind of like, we're going to do that. And then when we actually started tracking the drums, Jason was like, "What the fuck?" because because it's like, you in your brain you're like, "Wow, this is our longest album. It's like 34 minutes long." And in your brain you're like, 34 minutes worth of music. Let's just say we do this all like 4 times or whatever. You're like, that's a few hours. Like my ass,
Yeah.
it's a few hours. It's not a few. it took
No.
it took us, even though we were like pretty on it. Like, and Jason did nail a lot of stuff. Like, pretty quickly. Like it took a couple days to do the drums. And I mean, it some of the songs like two of the songs are like very long, and it was obviously it's like we did the thing where you're like, there's a long pause here, so we're
Yeah.
not going to try to record 12 minutes worth of drums all at once. We're going to make it to that long pause, and then we're going to pick up, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like, yeah. So
It's
I
crazy how different like ends of the spectrum can be. Like that first screamo band that I was in high school, like immediacy was everything. So like we would use a computer stick microphone and record our practices like in that room and then post it to MySpace immediately.
yeah, just like blown
Yes,
out,
like
just like, and
oh my
it's
god,
just
yes.
like, check this out.
Yep, and
Um,
like we were get it on MySpace immediately. We need everyone to hear this like right away. So it was like everything was so immediate and raw to us. I mean, we're emotional children, so it makes sense like that.
yeah.
And it was kind of the first era of like social media and like MySpace and having like what bands are in your top 8 and that kind of nonsense. And like
Mm-hmm.
to go from that to then like marathoning as dust collects at God City in 2 days is just insane to me. Like, and the more every time I record, no matter what band I'm in, like I'm always learning new stuff about it. And I used to be like kind of averse to that like polished kind of sound and making everything nice and clean. But like as I'm going on, I'm starting to realize that there are like still ways to get the sounds that I'm after, but like a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that huge tangent.
No, no, it's good. I need to be sometimes. I need to be reined in because I'll just I before I came down here, I told my wife I'm gonna go do my yapathon. But yeah, we love it. But yeah, it's it's a good thing that I didn't have access to all that stuff when I was first starting this because I mean I didn't do anything that was like it wasn't like, oh, that was regrettable. It's just like there would have just been a whole lot of stuff that just like was forgettable, not that it
Yeah,
was like, oh, this is, you know like shitty in some way. It's just it was
right,
shitty, it just
right,
wasn't
right.
good. um
Yeah.
like there's some stuff that I find demos of or whatever because I had this boom box that had a mic input, and I had this Radio Shack mic. I still have the mic because I can't like throw things away.
Sentimental.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
of
Like,
course, of
oh, so
course, I
many
get that.
demos. The boombox stopped working when there was a flood in my basement, and
Oh no.
the boombox got ruined. Um, but I had like, yeah, I'd plugged this microphone in, it had no like cone on it anymore because it was just like whatever. But I plugged this mic in, and it's like the demos are like way more listenable than like you would think. Like I have like legit 7 inches that don't have recordings
Oh
that are
yeah.
as good as this setup that I had. And still like I find something that I thought this was like, I thought, yeah, this was fucking sick. Like this was so good. Like I wish I had demos of this. We recorded them. Where are they? And then I find it and I'm like, holy shit. And I put it in and I press play and I'm like, oh my. Like what? You know?
I
Like
think you'd be surprised at what the stick mic could do on a computer.
yeah.
It's really impressive how I don't know if it was the room that we were in or what, but like there's a lot in there. Like I
Yeah.
mean, like I would be closest to the computer. Our vocalist would be like right next to me. Our other guitarist would be on the other side, and then bass and drums would be towards the back of the room. It was like a dining room sized room with a carpet, and like you could hear everything. Like you can hear parts where our drummer is screaming. Like clearly, it's wild. Like
Yeah.
it's so crazy, and it's funny too because like now, I mean, I don't know if it's going on as much now, but I know there was a period of time like in the last 10 years or less where people were like intentionally trying to make like low quality recording screamo stuff. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you have so much available to you now, like, and a lot of it is free. Like I'm surprised that people are kind of seeming to go out of their way to do that.
Yeah. I think that, you know, uh a lot of people are like really into stuff like flowers taped to pens or whatever, and like that band was really really big for a lot of people, like in the heydays of like Tumblr and stuff. And like,
Yeah.
I don't mean any like kind of thing by saying that. I just mean like there were was a time when people were very good at Tumblr, and like Connie from that band, I think she was very good at Tumblr, and like that was like a lot of people's intro to like screamy music. And
Yeah.
so nostalgia being what it is, it's like you still hear bands that are like, you're like, yeah, I think that they're kind of going for that like sound,
Yeah.
and I don't, yeah, I don't, I said it before, but it's like, nothing, like I don't think that like I think that the newest stuff that Usurp Synapse put out is like great and everything, but
Mhm.
like there's something about like their first 7 inches, their first couple, that's like
Mm.
the way that they were recorded. Like if you could hear everything as well as if it were recorded now with what we have available just like on our computers, like I don't think it would be as special,
Yeah. I, you
So
know,
I do get
I have
it, but
for sure. And I have to wonder too if it's like, is it like a younger generation sort of attempt to connect with the past in some way for the sake of like, I don't know, authenticity or some, I don't know, like totally made up thing,
yeah.
maybe not. But what I would say is, in response to what you were saying about the usurp stuff is like the first Chaos Pilot record is one of my favorite records of all time. I cannot fuck with the second one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of like the recording quality change, which is weird because it went the opposite way. So you'd think that it would be better. And I don't know. Like it's almost like it's too crisp and just there's not enough going on.
Yeah. I feel similarly with like the KMB Communique. Like their 7 inch is it like I've been trying to record I've been like, how do you make a recording sound like that for like
Mm,
15 years? And
yeah,
like
yeah,
they're split with 10 grand. Like I'm like, that's what my recordings sound like. It sounds
sure,
like them on
sure.
that. But what I'm trying to do is like, and it's like, yeah, it's sort of that thing where like most people in their right minds would be like, why are you trying to make it sound technically worse, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's like, but I'm not like, you know, it's just, yeah, I don't, I mean, that's the thing about like screaming music, right? We're all hung up on this idea of like what's real, you know?
yeah,
And like
yeah,
we're trying to find a way to express ourselves in the most authentic way possible. And sometimes it's like, you know, the way your guitar is being captured is not the way you're hearing it in your head. And most importantly, it's like not how you're hearing it in the sort of collective of your memory out of like the thousands of times you've heard this riff, like whether it was coming out of your amp or not, right?
yeah. Right,
And
right.
that's the thing, right? Because like that's that's like that's like I don't even we're chasing that in the first place, right? Because the riff comes into our imagination, and so we're
Mhm.
chasing that when we pick up the guitar. We're like, not quite, not quite,
Right.
and sometimes we settle for like that wasn't quite it. This is different, but I dig this too, and I dig this in a different way, or this worked out better, or all the different versions of that could be, right? But like, so sometimes like you played this song 100 times, you have this amalgam of all the times you played it. There's the best time, there's the worst times, and then it becomes this median. And then when you record it and you're like, that particular mic did something different to my guitars, like all these different factors, and like we're just chasing that, like, this is what it really sounds like thing, right?
Or like somebody's sweatshirt fell on the microphone and nobody noticed. You
Yeah,
got a completely different sound, and
yeah,
now it's this mystery element that nobody can solve. You know?
yeah, and that's why that's wild too because, you know, I'm never at a loss for like going on Instagram and accidentally seeing something like that, right? Where
Yeah, sure.
somebody's like, the next time you do a room mic for your drums, point the room right at the wall. Like point the mic right at the wall, and you're like, I gotta fucking try that, right? And so you
Yeah,
try
right.
it, and you know so yeah, you know, you're never at a loss like for um for ideas and ways to experiment, and then it makes it worse when you're like, this record sounds like the last one, wow, what like
Yeah,
how
right.
come how come I did all these different things and it doesn't sound like I did anything different, but I don't know, it's it's funny how that can all work out, but I mean, um I'm always at fault for being like, I'm gonna make the guitar sound so bad, like so gnarly, and then getting to the post production part and being like, I gotta make them sound not as bad. I don't know what was I thinking, you know. But like these are like, I cannot understand what notes these are. I gotta figure something out. But just
That's something that I would change about the next time that I record. I have, you know, I'm a self-taught guitar player. I've kind of been that way my whole life. I started with tabs and all this stuff, and so much of my playing is just like, oh, every string, okay, and like I'm starting to realize that certain parts that, you know, I'm playing them because I know what they sound like, right? I know, but they're not coming through. Kind of like what you're saying, they're
mm,
not coming through how I imagine them to because I'm muddying them up a little bit, and that kind of frustrates me. Like, for instance, we have this song called "The Hidden One," and the end of that song has this nice kind of like, we actually called the song Euro scrams when we first wrote it because it kind of reminded us of some of that like French type screamo. And there's
mm-hmm,
like a riff in there, but I'm playing like everything, so you can't hear it as much. It gets kind of buried. And I remember when we were mixing, like, so we marathoned that record, like literally, like the first day we went in on the Saturday, we mic'd all the drums, did all the drum tracks in one day, and we played along with Chris the whole time, and like those were the takes, and then we would just go in and fix stuff. Some of us didn't know that, so didn't didn't take it as seriously. So we had to fix a lot of stuff, but we managed to get it done. It was fine. But like, you know, we're going through mixing, and I was like, oh, like, can we get this part up a little bit? He's like, honestly, I think that's like a playing issue. I was like, shit, you're absolutely right. It totally is. So that's something that I would fix going forward. Be a little more technical about, you know, what I'm trying to get sound wise out of my instrument.
yeah, yeah, you have to be um you have to record with intent sometimes because you're used to just playing things live or whatever, or
Mhm.
and you're like, you're just in that moment and you're like, you're just chopping it up. But when it's like, you know, you want specific notes, like you're bouncing from the the E to the D to the A to the G, you know, in sort of an
Mhm.
arpeggio or something. You can't just loosely go over all the strings like you do when you're doing it live, because, you know, that's where somebody's going to say that's a playing issue. Like
Yeah, for sure.
you can't make those specific picking like qualities come out when it's a super distorted guitar, etc., you know, like
Right.
um and yeah, you have to get into that point. And I mean, uh, I'm really bad about that, like, because like I said, I like to have a moment when I'm recording. I like to get real in my head,
Mhm.
and um I like to think about how what I'm playing on guitar makes me feel, and I like to think
Mhm.
about, I like to do, I'm, you know, I mean, I just go ahead and just, you know, sometimes I get like into the colors of what I'm playing, and I'm sounding like an absolute like hippie right now or whatever, you know, but like I really do. I'm by myself, you know, and I'm trying
Yeah.
to have a moment that I can remember. I think
Yeah.
for me, as someone who records a lot of music, I and with my and the people that I collaborate with, I feel like I'm annoying them sometimes because I'm just like, here's the updates on what's happening, and because I want to have that experience with the people that I'm working with, even though we're remote or whatever, you know, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I have to get into that, and sometimes I'm doing what you described, which is like I'm like going back and I'm listening to it and I'm like, well, those notes could be picked out better to where they'd come
Sure.
through better. But I'll go the other way with it. I'll be like, but that felt so good. And I'll leave it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
I
so
it's Do you ever have trouble though with that? Like because you're writing something and it's making you feel a certain way and you're digging in so far to it and like, you share it with other folks and they're like, yeah, I don't really see that. Like, I don't really feel that. Like, because that can be tough. Like with our band, like there's stuff like that. Like I might think something sounds like a bum out riff or something like, like a tragic or sad kind of thing. And like other people, they look at me and like, what are you talking about? It's like having different opinions of like what colors are what.
yeah. Yeah,
That's tough.
I would say that that the like conflict isn't the right word, but
No.
I don't know what word I'm looking for, but just that like that way that someone else interpreted something, I would say that that's like not uncommon at all, but the but when I will ask for someone to edit themselves, or that's pretty uncommon. Like there's only a couple instances like that I can think of where I was like, I dig what you were doing, but I really need this part in specific. Like literally all the times that Tom Schlatter's done bass, there was one time where I
Hmm.
was like, I didn't imagine the bass moving around so much during this one part. Tom's like, I got you.
That's
Sends
cool.
sends the
Yeah.
thing back right away. But like the other thing where Tom interprets something completely different than me and sends it to me, like that can be like I'll get something and I'll be like, whoa, that, and I don't even know what to think about it. It's so different, right? But
Yeah.
I will sit with it because I'm like, I asked Tom to do this instead of just doing it myself because I want that.
Right.
Like
That's
I want
true.
to be
Yeah.
challenged by that. And
Yeah.
always, 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 the thing that I thought was so out of left field or whatever was the right thing for the part.
For
Like
sure.
once I sit with it and once I go, oh no, I get it, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think sometimes too, like even, and I think it goes all over the place, but like, I could bring a riff to practice and, Chris will be like, oh yeah, I don't like that. And I'll be like too precious about it and kind of be like, take it a little hard. And then like, months later, I'll circle back with it or something and he'll be like, oh, what is that? Or like,
yeah,
he'll,
yeah,
like you said, well, he'll like edit it or something or kind of add to it. And like, that's the whole part of it being a collaborative effort is like not being so precious about what you bring to the table. And
yeah,
I think as a band, we've gotten so much stronger with that type of stuff. Like, it's like, when you learn about critiquing art, like don't just say that sucks. Like, tell me why. You know what I mean? Like, what don't you like? What can we do? How do we fix it? You can't just
yeah,
say it's fucking stock.
yeah. It's stock. Um, yeah, it's funny because I've told this story before, but my band Keiki Obati, when we were sort of on the way out, I was introducing like three or four songs to the band, and and one of the members was like, I don't like these new songs, and I was like, why? And like he was like, I don't know, they're just like too emo, they're not like heavy enough or whatever. And I was like, and by the time the band ended, that person wasn't in the band anymore. but
Mm,
but um but then like I start this other band, Akamili, and the first three songs that I had for Akamili were those songs that Keiki Obati never got around to.
mm,
And Akamili like was sort of like a thing for a little bit. We were practicing, we were getting our stuff together, and I worked with the person who was in Keikyo Body who didn't like those songs.
Yeah.
And, it was just kind of like, yeah, I mean, I have got this new thing started, but we don't have a bass player. And, like, he was like, well, I'll come over and check it out. And if I'm into it, then, like, I'll be your bass player. And he comes over, and we're literally playing those three songs that
Hell
less
yeah.
than a year before he was like, I don't like them. And then he's like, yeah, this is sick, like sign me up. And immediately I was like, you said you didn't like these songs. And he's like, well, I mean, I'm just more into stuff like this now, so I guess it's cool. And and he was in the band, but like
Do you think it had anything to do with being two separate bands though also? Like
no.
were there similarities in sound?
Nah,
No.
cause he shit all over at the drive-in the first time I played him at the drive-in too. I think
Sure.
his taste just grew up, changed,
Yeah,
whatever,
that'll
however you
happen.
want to, like expanded. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think his taste just expanded. He was ready for it then, man.
And if that's not happening, like what are you doing? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like if your
sure,
tastes aren't expanding musically, then why are you still playing music? Because that seems insane to me. I don't know.
sure, sure. It's just fun. It's
That is
funny when
funny
that
though.
works out that way, where you're just like, you know. And I mean, I realistically don't think Akameli was that different from Keikyo Body. I mean, like,
Sure.
I was just chatting with Keikyo Body, vocalist Tommy, and we were talking about, we were like, every time I listen to this, I'm like, this is way more melodic than I remember. I'm like, well, I'm a melodic, I'm very melodic. That's, I like a melody, but
Yeah.
you know, it's I like I love a what goes around comes around moment for sure. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to that, like, that Godsmack Dead Air story is like, I will write riffs and they'll become fully formed songs and we'll keep running them at practice. And then I'll get to a certain point where I'm like, this isn't good. Like, I don't like this. And everybody has to like talk me off the ledge about it, which is crazy.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
works, like we make it work. So it's good.
yeah. That is more like that. That speaks to certain stages in a release's development for me, because
Mm,
you're in a band, you're talking about a situation where you're playing these songs for a long time, and then when you get to the studio, you have zero of the process which I go through, which is your process of you're playing the songs for a while and you're like, I don't know if this is that good. Like, that's what happens once I've sent the what I've done to the other collaborators. That's what happens in my
mm,
head.
mm.
Like, when somebody's got to put vocals on something and it's taking a while, what starts happening in my head is like, do the songs suck? Is that why? Like, are they
Oh
just
no.
like, are they just like, yeah, maybe I kind of don't want to do this because these songs suck. And then, like, I will get the vocals back and the vocals go on there, and then I get closer to the final mix and I was like, what was I thinking? This is fun. This is good. Like, where was that doubt coming in,
Damn,
Like,
that's crazy. Is that the only way that y'all work? Like you do like remote stuff most of the time, or
yeah, I mean, I like, I,
that's crazy.
I like, our, like, Coma Regalia's, drummer lives in Spokane, Washington.
Mhm.
And so, usually when we record full lengths, like, we'll try to have him fly out here and he'll record the drums with me, and like I'll do a scratch track in the ear. And so we do have like a really a lot of back and forth as far as like, the ideas and what's going into the album, and the drum
Yeah.
parts and this and that. But when we do like other things, like when we did the snag split, what happened was, like, he he like, we would record riffs or drums, and then we would put them together, and then I would make like I would Frankenstein this really like some of the drums on this demo version that we did of that split, some of the drums were done by me and some of the drums were done by Jason. And it was
Wow.
this real weird. And it's funny too, because like I still have those demos somewhere and I'm always like, I'm going to just like put those on my Patreon one day, just like for people that are there to just be like, wow, this is weird but cool. Like, bit of
Yeah.
sort of like lore or history or whatever. But it's some of it is wild because it's like, whoa, this was a lot faster in the demo. And it's like, so it's not necessarily depending on whether I was playing the drums on that bit or Jason. It's like,
Mm.
it's just they were faster. And then like once we were sort of like had the songs to where we were like, yeah, like that part doesn't need to be quite so fast, like that
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
needs to breathe a little bit more, or this part actually does need to be faster, or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then a lot of projects that I do is like I will record like almost all the instruments and then someone else will do vocals or something. So yeah, it's a lot of just like that, and or like I'll just do the drums and then somebody else, or I'll do drums and some guitars and then there'll be another guitar and there'll be bass. And so I have all these, like I have files coming from me from Milwaukee, from Texas, from Canada,
That's crazy.
and we
Yeah.
put this whole thing and yeah, obviously it's a whole other way to do it. And that's why I love to make these moments like where you're goofing off in the group chat or whatever, and
Yeah.
all those things, because it's like, you know like I'm older and I got a family and I got immunocompromised teenager, and like so I even if I wanted to, I can't. It's not necessarily the best idea to
Right.
have a
Right.
whole band in your house all the time.
For sure. For sure.
So it's yeah, it's all about just like figuring out how to keep making it work. But
Yeah. And that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, it's fun. But yeah, I'm interested in like where you were saying how you didn't know when you were recording the scratch tracks for the album that they so much of it was going to get used. It was
Oh,
just
so
like,
I knew. I knew.
oh, okay, you knew.
I knew. My Jake, our other guitar player, and our bassist Travis didn't know
Oh, okay.
apparently, and they were like kind of goofing off and stuff. And they admitted to this. It's not like it's not a secret, but they
Yeah.
admitted to it, and which is hilarious. But like like Jake is more of a perfectionist in terms of recording stuff anyway. Like he's been in a lot of bands, recorded a lot of stuff. He's the other guitar player, and so it makes sense that he was kind of like bummed out about it, but like we made it work. He
Mm-hmm.
had said like he would rather do like individual tracks next time, which is something I've never done. And well, actually, no, that's wrong because I did that on the EP. I was actually really afraid to do that because I'd always done live recordings,
Mm-hmm.
but the EP was all like single instruments, and that was like I don't know, that's really nerve wracking. It's like now everyone's gonna see how bad of a guitar player I am. Here we go. Like so. I think the only way to get over that is to keep doing it and practice it more. But so yeah, they were able to like go in and punch their stuff in pretty quick to fix it up. 15 minutes of music in 2 days is pretty intense, but yeah, we managed to make it work. We literally finished recording the record at like, I want to say like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then rushed to this place called O'Brien's in Boston and played a show with, I think it was like Foxtails played, and I forget who else, but it was like a really, really intense day. Like it was rough. And then we did
Yeah.
vocals on like some nights separately, and that was, but it was really cool. It was fun working at God City, and it was like weird being in there because it's like smaller than I had thought. Like you'd seen pictures and stuff growing up, and I'm like, whoa, God City, and then you go in there, and it's just like a small little room with like a bunch of cool amps, and you're like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah, I've been recording myself so long like that I don't know if I would know what to do if I went somewhere else.
For
Like
sure, yeah, yeah,
like it's weird because I do record very quickly. Like in hindsight, right? It
yeah.
doesn't necessarily feel that way, but like I do record very quickly. But like I feel like if I went to another studio, I feel like what I remember from doing it like the last time I do it, like in Akameli and stuff. In Akameli, I was so nervous to go to the studio because I feel like if I don't do everything like perfectly the first time, everybody's just gonna look at you like, "Wow, you're terrible," and like whatever. But it's funny because like the Akameli like 7-inch that never ended up happening, but we did a recording for was the last time I actually went somewhere and recorded, and our
Mm,
other guitar player was having a really hard time. Like he went first, and then when I went up, like he made a remark. He was like nobody was making fun of him or anything, but he was really
yeah.
frustrated. And when I went up, he was like, "Yeah, let's see how long this takes you." Like he made kind of a weird remark. Like I don't know if he meant it as mean, but it felt mean at the time. And I like everyone was first take. Like and I was
Yeah.
like, "No, I'm good with
Yeah.
it." And because I
Oh
was
no.
so nervous and I was so whatever, like now I'm just like I get in this mindset when I'm recording where I'm like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna, I'm not gonna practice it once. I'm just gonna start recording just right away, and I'm just gonna run it,
Mm.
and like, and then at the end of it, depending on how I felt about it, I'll hit save or I'll hit delete.
Would you say that it's fair to say you thrive in chaos?
No, I
Because
just
that's
don't.
how
I
that
just I
statement
don't thrive.
feels.
I'm absolutely like the whole time. I'm like but like that's the only way I know how to do it, right? So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but but like everything I've alluded to before is just like it's true in that like I'm looking for that like I'm looking for that like when I hit stop on the record, I'm looking for that bit where I'm like, "Oh, that felt so good."
Hell yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
hit accept. And then I listen to it and I might have one thing where I'm like, definitely gonna go in. And what I usually do is I'll actually record the whole thing again, even if I only just want that one part.
Yeah. Why
And
not?
then
Right.
I'll sort of see like, you know, like as a whole, is the second one better, or like what, you know,
Hmm.
or did I
Hmm.
just miss, or did I just need that one part? And like,
For sure.
yeah, I mean, and then sometimes you find out like I'm actually just not good at that one part because I messed that one part up again.
Every take is good except for that part still.
So sometimes you do get to that point where you're like, "Fuck it, I'm just doing that one part," and you
Yeah.
do just that you get to that point. But yeah, that's always a fun thing to find out too, where you're like, "Wow, I just fucked that up like 2 times in a row. I'm just not good at that part." I hear it in my head when it comes up to it. I think I got it, and then I just kind of didn't get it. Like and yeah, try that one again. But but it's fun. I mean, like I I enjoy everything about making music. Some people they hate the recording. I do get nervous even sometimes when I'm still doing it by myself. I'm setting up the mics like, "Ooh, here he
Yeah.
comes." And I'm like, "I don't have to pay anybody.
Yeah.
Like what am I worried about?"
Yeah.
But
You can work at your own pace.
yeah, I would love to go to God City. I would love to have my shit together and go there. I would love to go to uh and record with Jay Robbins, have my shit together and go record with Jay Robbins,
Hmm.
I would love all these things, but yeah, I do sort of, I found what kind of works for me, and yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, getting back to like the album, um, y'all were, I'm assuming that the album was done for a while before you actually dropped it and stuff because you had like 2 or 3 singles that you were dropping like every few months. And that has to do obviously with sort of like the way vinyl pressing, takes like forever these days,
An
probably.
eternity.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
like, is it safe to say that like at this point, although you're like still playing everything off the album and stuff, that you're like well into writing like new songs and stuff like that, or like what's the future of the band looking like as far as like from now and like beyond?
Um, we're definitely well into it. It's just very fragmented. Like, I mean, the first record, like, I feel like half of it, if not more, was written before the pandemic, and obviously we didn't practice for like all of that time.
Mm,
And that was tough too because Mary had joined the band and come to two practices, and then like the world ended for a little while, which
mm,
was awful. And so then we finally got back to it and got our stuff together and recorded the record in March. It came out in October. We've been playing the songs, like some of them, like well before we even recorded it, and it's tough because you always get like in your head about it, like, oh man, like I played this a zillion times, and like every single time you play that at a show, somebody new is here, somebody's hearing it for the first time, and it's like hard to always keep that in your brain.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like we've had full songs, like we have two that are pretty much done now, and then a ton of like fragments that just need to be like sculpted into stuff. The amount of ideas that we have that are like recordings of just riffs or whatever is like endless right now, so we just need to get everyone's schedules on the same page and get in the room together, because I mean we work best like all together playing stuff. Like we can send riffs back and forth and stuff, but for me, I'm like a kinesthetic learner. I need to be like present in doing things, and you know I think that's what motivates me. So hopefully, I don't know, in the next couple months we'll be able to finish a record and then talk about recording it in maybe the spring or the summer. I know we're talking to Kyle from Votive about potentially doing a weekender in Texas at some point. We're playing Dilly Dally. That's like our next show, I think, is Dilly Dally in Philadelphia, which will be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be cool too, because like we've done like we played the ZBR pre-fest like 2 years ago, and all of us couldn't stay. Like we had staggered exits. Like people had to leave on certain days, and then like we played New Friends this year, and then we got we did some dates with Jerome Stream and the Mirrors, which was like incredible, but it was also like bittersweet because we wanted to hang out at New Friends,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, touring with Jerome Stream is a pretty big deal. So
Yeah.
also Numbers, that band's awesome. Those kids are great. But yeah, so and then I think we're gonna try to plan for the West Coast next year. Like so much of our schedule is like, we can either run weekenders or like plan really carefully with like PTO and stuff. Like I work during the year. I work in elementary school. I run an after school program, so my summers are a little more lax. But I just have to know like ahead of time. I mean, my wife is she owns her own business, so she can kind of take off when she wants, but she has to pay to do it. So that's tough. Um, that's Mary, by the way.
Yeah, I saw the page and I was like, I need Mary to cut my hair. But I was like, but I don't need it 6 months from now. I need it like right now. But
Yeah, I know she's tough to get in with, but she does a great job.
she was so good. Like I saw some. I was like, that's actually what I want my hair to look like, and it never does. And I need instructions. I need a cut, and I need instructions. I need
Yeah,
both.
for sure, for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, it's yeah, it's it sometimes it does get that way where it's like, well, we have to pick our battles, as it were. Like, well, we can
Oh
do
yeah,
these things or we can do these things, and but you know, kind of getting to the point where we're going to start wrapping it up. But I did want to
sure.
ask, you said that you have lots of fragments. And so is this sort of a situation where, like, the laptop desk mic comes out again? And do you save all those little, like, do you record your little, like, when you're onto something at a practice or whatever, and you're like, we need to save this so we don't forget it, like, situation? Or,
For sure. Yeah, we do. I
yeah.
mean, we do a couple things. Like for me personally, if I'm sitting in my office like tooling around with a riff for a while, I'll get it to somewhere good and then record it and just kind of hang on to it. I don't like to send stuff anymore because I feel like it's much easier to take critiques in person than send a riff to somebody that you care so much about, and they'll be like, yeah, I don't know. Like it's way easier to have a conversation with somebody in person about that. So we kind of like save them for those times. Unless
Sure.
something is like really cooking, then we'll send it. But and then if we go to practice and we'll mess around with something, sometimes I'll come to practice and be like, here's a whole song, and that's it. Or Chris will be like, here's a whole song I wrote, or whatever, or we'll just put pieces together. But
Yeah.
anytime we're on to something, like we all know it, and we'll take a video of it just so we have it for reference to like
Yeah.
kind of practice it and
Yeah.
mull it over in our heads and stuff.
Yeah. Also, to be fair, it's like you you just like a guitar riff, right? Like you don't know like the extent of what this thing is capable of. So like
Right.
if somebody just hears it and nothing clicks to for them right away, like in when you present this to a group of people, there's 3 people that can chime in. There's 4 people,
Right.
whoever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
like um and so somebody's like, "Oh, what if I did this on the bass?" And then the next thing that clicks with somebody else, whereas like, somebody could just hear this and be like, "Stalk," you know?
Yeah.
Like
It also doesn't help that I would send like an unplugged electric guitar video of me playing something. Hey, what about this? And it's just like,
I
joink,
only
joink,
hear
joink, joink.
the pick scraping. I don't hear
Right.
yeah.
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 I'm like, this goes so hard, dude. Check it out. But
Yeah.
in Chris's defense, a lot of times when he sends riffs, he'll go in like because he lives in a house, he'll go into the basement and like plug it in, so I get a little bit of gain on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so
Yeah. It's funny like definitely I've been the sender and on the receiving end of the like I don't know, I think I can tell what the rhythm is by the way that the pick is just going but other than that I don't know. But
for sure.
yeah, I think it's great that we can just we have so many ways now to just save all of our little fragments and tidbits and sometimes sometimes it's like I'll sort of have different ideas for releases, and like one of our releases is basically just that. It's like these are all sort of intentionally not fully formed ideas that like as a whole I think complete a picture. And
Right.
like and everybody, and then I'm like, how come nobody buys this album? It's because they're not ready for it yet. No, but it's because they listened to one song and they're like, no thanks. But yeah, I don't know. That my friends is why I do not look at Bandcamp stats. But
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't
yeah,
even. It's weird. Like I'll
yeah,
listen to new stuff now, and it won't hit me at all. And then I'll see a band play, and I'm completely blown away. Like I feel like a some kind of weird old head now, but I'm like I've always loved seeing bands like my whole life, But
uh-huh.
like I've never put so much into seeing them like before listening to them now. Like I will actively not listen to a band if I know that we're playing with them because I like want them to like blow me away.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
do
most of the time they do.
I do the sort of the same thing. I'll do it with like one band out of
Sure.
every show. Like I'll sort of check out the bands and I'll be like, nah, I'm saving that one. Because like
Yeah.
I just it's not because I'm like, oh, I don't want to listen and feel like I'm not impressed, or I just want a surprise. I'm just like I just
Oh,
want something to
absolutely.
surprise me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the
Like
greatest feeling in the
yeah.
world when that happens and you have no idea. It's like seeing a movie. Like if I really want to see a movie, like I will go out of my way to avoid learning anything about it. I want it to be a completely fresh and new experience.
Yeah.
And
It's
when
like
it hits so hard.
yeah. It's like especially when it's a real weird band or something, you're just like, what? Like even if you don't like it, you're like, this is cool, like
Uh,
because it's just weird or whatever.
we played in Providence with this band called Crippling Alcoholism.
Oh, they're
And
so weird and cool. Yeah.
I did not know anything about them at all. And the singer comes up in like a bathrobe with like like a tank top on and like slides and basketball shorts. And they just like absolutely fucking fully sent it. It was like, it made me think of like Idols and like Future Islands. And there's another one, like Soft Kill a little bit. And it just completely blew me away. I had no idea what to. And actually, the first time I saw the band Soft Kill was the same thing. I had never, ever heard Soft Kill. And then I saw them live and it was like insane. I love those experiences. Elizabeth Color Wheel is another one.
Yeah. That
There's a
sounds
band
like
called
that sounds like Caution Children too. Like the vocalist for Caution Children definitely will come out in like a legit like King's outfit,
That's
like
sick.
from the costume store, and the next
Yeah.
time just come out in like looking uh, like a scientist or something. You know,
But
like just
so what I loved about the crippling alcoholism dude though is like it wasn't a bit. Like he was like serious. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't like look how funny I'm dressed. He was
no,
like he
no,
just like
no,
played a
no,
character. You know, it was like
no. Yeah, no. Caution Children. It's the same way.
oh okay cool
Yeah,
cool
it's not.
yeah so
It's
sick
not like look, I'm being. It's like this. Like obviously the way that I'm dressed is a thing, but it's
yeah
like I'm just coming out and doing the show like I'm doing the show, you know?
so
Like
sick.
and yeah, one of the times when we played with Caution Children and the vocalist was it was the time when, they were in the like the king outfit and my daughter was with me and she was like uh I don't know, 13 maybe at the time. And she was
Yeah.
like, he's the king of rock. And I was like, 100%.
Hell yes.
Yeah, it was a cool show, cool memory. Great band live, great people. But yeah. Um so, we're over the hour mark here, which is where I try to keep it. I think we've had a great conversation. I really enjoyed sort of getting to know you. We sort of heard about
Same.
like Dilly Dally Fest and like hopefully a new album coming together. The way that y'all bring things together and everything. But is there anything else that you wanted to sort of like plug or like where are the places that people should get in touch with you or follow to find out when things are happening?
So I think we have a Facebook. I don't use Facebook, so I have no idea. I know our Instagram is just newforms.tv. Everything is pretty much there that we are posting. As far as my stuff, I'm just at Black Coffee
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram. It's like like a fiend for black coffee, essentially, all one word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do like illustration design work. I do all this stuff for New Forms. So if anybody's looking for some work, let me know. I'm available. Got a website and all that too, blackcoffee.com.
For sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
Plugging wise.
Yeah.
Listen to Sanagi.
Yeah. Oh my God. That
Damn
7
rips.
inch is so good.
So good.
Yeah.
Love those people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess do you have any other like quick like listen to this album, even if it's not your friends or whatever?
Oh man, that's tough. Listen to Bryce Dessner and Johnny Greenwood's St. Carolyn by the Sea record. Some of it, the Johnny Greenwood stuff is just the stuff from There Will Be Blood, which is amazing, but the Bryce Dessner side is like wild. It's like cinematic, atmospheric stuff, which I love, like scores and things like that. It's one of my all-time favorite records.
And that was my conversation with Justin Valliere. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking the time to chat with me. Thanks to all of y'all for listening wherever you are as well. Until next time, take care and do good things.